All right, welcome everybody. And I just wanted to kick things off, and then I will be turning things over to our speaker today, which is Andrew. And my friend, I appreciate you joining us today and talking about a great topic, a very topical one on 5 actionable strategies to increase taproom sales. And Andrew's background is the founder of Secret Hopper, as well as the Craft Beer Professional Group. So just a tremendous amount of industry knowledge, and appreciate you sharing that with us today. So I'll turn things over to you.
Well, Dan, thanks again for having me. I know we saw each other recently in North Carolina. It was a great time having pints together, but it's always great to connect virtually as well. So everybody, my name's Andrew Copeland with Craft Beer Professionals and Secret Hopper. Today, I'm going to primarily be wearing my Secret Hopper hat. So I ran a food service for about 20 years. I worked at stadiums and arenas all across the country. I worked at monster truck shows, concerts, basketball games, comedy events, you name it. I probably worked at it. It was awesome. You know, when I ran that company, I was the general manager, so I wasn't an owner, but I felt really invested in it. But, you know, while I was running that company, I always had ideas for new projects. And my wife was the frequent recipient of all these crazy ideas that I had, probably like you had when you first had this concept, Dan, Ali, and Jonathan as well. And Jonathan, don't get me wrong, is it Banshee? No, I'm probably not getting your dog's name correctly.
Yeah, I was on mute, but yes, her name is Banshee.
Yes, it was such a pleasure seeing Banshee in Milwaukee. So, you know, for all of you out there, when you had these ideas to start your own business, a lot of people probably thought, are they really going to do it? So my wife was used to me feeding her all these crazy concepts. So one day she was working at an animal hospital and I was texting her on her iPhone. And you all know what it's like. You see the dots appear and they go away. You see the dots appear and they go away. So I texted her and I said, hey, I've got this great idea for a business. We're going to be a mystery shopping company and we're going to call it Secret Hopper. And so I'm just watching those dots go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally they pop up and it says, that's stupid. So what do you do when someone questions your business idea? You buy the domain, you plan it out, and make it happen. And I imagine all of you who are running breweries these days or running your own business, someone questions you at some point in time. But when you launch your own idea, you are so passionate about it. You go all in. You want to prove everybody wrong. And it's just so fun to be part of that journey. And when I launched Secret Hopper in 2017, I say there were only 5,000 breweries, you know, only about 5,000 breweries. And now they're nearly 10,000 breweries in the United States. And the landscape has changed. I mean, a few years ago, you could make okay beer, know how to run a business, and be pretty successful. But that's not quite the case anymore. And a lot of it is pandemic influence. You know, you have to make great beer, but you also have to know how to run a really successful business. If you don't know how to do that, then you're going to fall behind, and you have to constantly be able to innovate. Now, looking specifically at the taproom landscape, you know, when I first launched Secret Hopper in 2017, you know, I was always preaching the importance of having memorable taproom experiences. You have to make that experience just as memorable as your beer. But there's certain factors out there these days that have really changed the mindset of most people in the taproom space. Just looking at the guest in particular, they're being more intentional when they're going out. With people, you know, during, say, the pandemic, even up to now, going out a little less frequently, when you do go out somewhere, you want it to check all the boxes. And when I say check all the boxes, you know, you don't just need to go to the place that has a delicious beer. You're also looking for a bite to eat. You're also looking for some entertainment, perhaps. And you're also looking for a place that can, you know, satisfy the 4-year-old or person who's not drinking beer you're going along. You have to be really intentional when you're choosing where you're going these days. And when you're going out, guests are looking for that overall experience. And you as taproom managers and owners, it's your job to provide it, because everybody's making great beer. If you're not making great beer, you're probably not going to last long. But guests are craving more than just great beer. They want that overall experience. And as you all know, there's more competition these days. So you really have to truly find ways to stand out. And as I mentioned a second ago, a big factor is the audience you were going after. You know, at one point, you could just attract the beer nerds like all of us us in this room today. But that's no longer the case. Now you're trying to appeal to non-beer drinkers, people who are just going for food, people who are social drinkers just looking for an event to attend. But at the end of the day, in your tap room, that is the epicenter of your brand. It is where you have the potential to make the most profit. So I want to share my screen today, and I'm not going to share many images. I want this to be very conversational. So Allie and Jonathan, if you have anything you want to add in or talk about, feel free to jump in. But I want to show a quick diagram that I refer to as the Venn diagram of the taproom experience. And as you can see at the very top, there's quality beer. You got to make quality beer. As I mentioned, if you don't have that quality beer, you're probably not going to last too long. You also have that memorable atmosphere. An atmosphere could be everything from the temperature of your place to the music that you're playing, to the art on the walls. Do you offer food? Are you offering entertainment? Are you offering music? What types of factors are contributing to that atmosphere? Because people are looking for that. And arguably my favorite component of this, but equally as important, is having engaging staff. You have to put out a really high level of hospitality. And one of my favorite books that I've read recently is by an author named Will Guidara. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. Has anybody here read it before? And what Unreasonable Hospitality is about, Will, who wrote the book, owned the business in New York City called 11 Madison Park. He was one of the co-owners of it. And they were known for having world-class food. They were ranked best food in the world at some point by whoever ranks that kind of crazy thing. But he didn't just want to be known for having the best not beer, but food in the world, or beer in your case, as you would say. He wanted to have the best hospitality you would find in a restaurant of that caliber. So his goal was to have the hospitality match the quality of their food, hence Unreasonable Hospitality. It's a fantastic read. It really inspires you to be the best you can be. And a lot like Secret Hopper, you know, our goal is to always focus on the little things that can make a big difference. And that was one of our early taglines. There's a story in the book Unreasonable Hospitality. They talked about at one point in time, they created this gelato cart that went into like a museum courtyard. So you had this delicious gelato. It was in a beautiful atmosphere, but they wanted to find some way, some little touch that when the guest ordered the gelato, their mind would be blown. So what they did, they found this cute, fancy little wood spoon that was almost Instagram worthy, that people would take a picture of it as they were eating their gelato in the museum courtyard, and it would just be an overall maximum experience. So I was driving through the middle of nowhere, Virginia, a few months ago. I stopped in a coffee shop and needed a drink on a long drive, and I got my coffee. And you know how when you go to a lot of the mainstream coffee shops, they give you like a little plug. It's probably green or red that just keeps your coffee from spilling in the car. Now, I'm going to try to hold up this little thing. I keep it on my desk because it always makes me smile, and I hope it does the same for you. But if you look at it, it's just a little wood stopper with a smiley face on it. And at the end of the day, you know, I've had this on my desk 6 months, and I keep it there because it's these little things that are truly going to blow your guests' minds. And in your tap room, you're going to make great beer. You're going to have a great experience. But what I want to talk about a lot today is your staff and how they can be your biggest asset. So I want to tell two quick little examples of why, you know, staff training and staff education and hospitality can be a problem. And then we're going to talk about a few ways that you can solve it. Easy ways you can do right after watching this 20 or so minute webinar that you can take back to your tap room and make more money immediately. So there's a brewery near me. I'm not going to call them by name. This isn't a great story, but my wife and I went to the brewery for the first time. We walked in, and the second you walk in, you're looking around and you're confused. You don't know where to order. The atmosphere was all out of whack, and we did not even know where the line began to get to the register. So finally, we get our bearings. We walk through the little bit of stanchion that didn't quite make sense the way they had it lined up, and we end up at the register where two employees are waiting. In the meantime, my wife and I, we looked up at the big wall right above us. This brewery was known for making some of the haziest of hazy, weird beers that we all saw for a phase in there. And you're looking at these beer names, and honestly, they're a bunch of gibberish. They don't make a lot of sense, and you're looking at this menu. It doesn't have a lot of information. It doesn't even always have the style. It doesn't always have the ABV. It doesn't have the serving size. One important thing in a tap room is to give the guests the tools to order themselves and have them take those tools and be able to order again. So we're looking at this menu, and there's a couple of the beers I had kind of heard of. So we finally got up in line, and the bartender, I approached him. they're just looking for me. They were waiting for me to speak, and it was one of the most awkward experiences I had in a tap room. So after realizing that they're not going to greet me, they're not going to say, "Hey, welcome to the brewery. Are you interested in trying this?" I awkwardly say, "Do you offer flights?" No, they don't offer flights. So I ordered 2 half pours of the beers that I had heard before. As I mentioned, they're the haziest of beers I could possibly find that day of the week. So they hand me these 2 half pours, and I asked the bartender, which is which? And Dan, they couldn't tell me. They couldn't tell me which beer was which. Having your staff be able to explain your beers, tell your story, and give the guests the tools to order it over again is so important, because they could have served me the best beer I've had my entire life. But unless I know the name of it or how to order it again, I'm not able to. And that was a really frustrating experience. Another experience that I had at another local brewery here in Virginia, it was a brewery that had been open about 2 years. Up until this point in time, they had never had a team meeting, bringing all their front of house and back of house in one room at the same time. We're not going to talk about meetings too much today, but yes, you should be having pretty regular meetings with your team, whether pre-shift or on a set schedule. But so I brought the team together for their first team meeting ever in 2 years. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is easy ways that you can make more money. And one of those, which we're going to dive into shortly, is encouraging more to-go beer. So I get all their team in one room and I say, "Hey, everybody, Saturday's coming up. What's going to motivate each of you to sell more crowlers, growlers, cans, you name it, this Saturday afternoon?" So I ask everybody. Someone says, "Well, a local gift card to another restaurant." Someone says, "Maybe give me, a company meal or something. Order me some food I can have after my shift." Someone said, "Well, just give me some low fills." Someone said, "Give me some merchandise from the company store. I'm tired of washing my shirt." But at the end of the day, all they wanted, and they voted on it, was a $20 gift card to Chick-fil-A. So let me say that again. A $20 gift card to Chick-fil-A, a fancy chicken sandwich. Whoever sold the most to-go beer that Saturday afternoon, one person was going to get a $20 gift card to Chick-fil-A, and the entire staff would be more motivated to ask guests that question. Would you like some to go? So it's a lot easier to motivate your team than you may think. And it's so important to simply understand your staff, understand why they're working there, and understand what motivates them. Now, wearing my Craft Beer Professionals hat, we partner with Craft Beer Advisory Services. They're putting out a ton of fantastic taproom data out there, looking at trends and seeing what the customers want when they come to your taproom. And in our 2023 employee satisfaction study, we learned that 1 out of 3, 33% of employees don't agree that they were properly trained for their role. That's literally 1 out of 3 employees don't believe they were trained to work in a taproom role in a brewery. That blows my mind. And I think one thing we're all guilty of is when we meet someone who's worked in the industry, you hire someone for your brewery or taproom. "Oh, you've worked in a brewery before? You know what to do." Well, yes, that may be the case. They may know the underlying principles of serving beer. But do they know how your credit card processing system works? Do they know how to void a transaction in your POS? Do they know how to cut the lights off? Do they know how to reset the router in case there's an internet issue? Do they know how to tell your story to each guest that crossed the bar and to explain why the brewer made that specific beer and the story behind it? You really need to make sure you give your team the tools to connect with each guest and tell your story. Just because they've worked at a tap room before doesn't mean they know the practices, the best practices you want them to do while working for your brand. So when you look at people working in a tap room, one thing I think is really important is to understand why they're working there. Allie and Jonathan and Dan, you all in your businesses, you want to be successful. You want to make money. And part of that when you're in a tap room is getting tabs as high as possible. And I imagine your staff there, your taproom staff, your servers, your bartenders, your hostesses, whatever role they may be, they probably want to make a bit of money too. And from this employee satisfaction survey, 78% of taproom staff list making more money as a factor that could have a high impact on their future happiness. Literally 4 out of 5 people working in your tap room, they list making more money as something that's going to motivate their future happiness. So today, I want to give you 5 easy ways you can help them make more money. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen once more. Dan, you've got me all tripped up using Google Meet, but
I'm
I'm
keep you on your
learning.
toes.
You know, you're keeping me on my toes, but we've got a new image to share right now. So right now, everyone, you should see taproom mistakes and opportunities. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to look at a behavior. We're going to look at the opportunity that comes from the behavior, and I'm going to give you a very easy solution that you can take back with you today. And so often in webinars like this, and I'm guilty of it as well, we consume so much data. We look at so many words. So all I'm asking you for today is to find the one thing that resonates with you, take it back to your tap room, and put it in action. So when I look at the taproom experience, I like to start at the beginning, the moment a guest enters, to going to the very end where you have the opportunity to thank the guests. So let's start. We have all been in a taproom experience before where you go in, just like I talked about that story a minute ago, and I'm not greeted upon entry. You have that awkward entry where you know they see you, but they don't greet you. The opportunity here is guests spend 12% more when greeted upon entering the tap room. Now, I know everybody has tap rooms of all shapes and sizes. If you're that small corner store size tap room that fits 25 people, I imagine the bartender can holler across, "Hey, Andrew, welcome to the brewery," and that does the job. But in many places, it may be worth your time to have our host or hostess at the door to kind of be the concierge. When your guest enters, you can say, "Hey, here's where you order, here's how you get food, the restrooms are over there. If you have any questions, I'm here to help you." To be that guide, because that first touch point, that greeting, goes a long way, and guests are going to spend 12% more when greeted upon entry. And a lot of the data I'm quoting today, we've been lucky enough to have a data set of over 9,000 unique taproom visits from all across the country over the past 7 years. So that's what I'm going to be quoting a lot of today. And if anybody has any questions following, feel free to reach out to me at andrew@secrethopper.com. I'm happy to dive into more data individually with you. So the solution: if someone's not greeting the guest, here's 3 things you can easily do. A simple smile. "Hey, welcome to Andrew's Brewery," or maybe just that wave, "and I'll be with you shortly." So simple, so basic, but people like to be greeted upon entry. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, it might arguably be a controversial one: flights. Jonathan, do you like pouring flights? Alex,
No,
flights?
I
No.
don't.
Do you serve them in your tap room?
Yes, we do.
And that's the response I get from most people. Flights are a fantastic way to help a guest find what's right for them. You know, all of us, when we go to a brewery, we probably know what we're in the mood for, but we have to realize that a lot of people coming to breweries may actually still be coming for the first time. You know, they might come for a social event, they might come for a bite to eat, they might come because a friend dragged them out. A flight is a great tool to help them find what's right for them. And they may have came out for trivia, but they might realize that they really like your beer that they didn't even know existed, and that's their next reason to come. So if you see someone for the first time or someone's looking confused at the menu, say, "Hey, you know, Jonathan, would you like to start with a flight?" And even me, when I go to a new brewery, I love a flight. And for you all, financially, why does a flight make sense? Guests spend 27% more when offered a flight. They're going to be more likely to order future beers, take them home, and come back because you help them find what's right for them. And we have a whole article that dives into different strategies of when to encourage a flight. But a simple thing you can do is, interested in starting with a flight to find what you're in the mood for. And I really do love the question, what you're in the mood for. And I love that question. I give a lot of credit to Katie at the Glass Jug Beer Lab out of North Carolina. Perhaps, Dan, you got the opportunity to meet her while you were there in Winston-Salem, but Katie loves the question, what are you in the mood for? Because the example she gives, there's certain things that we as beer drinkers might like. You know, I like Imperial Stout sometimes, but when it's 90 degrees on a summer day, do you think I really want an Imperial Stout? Maybe, but probably not. So the more relevant question could be to ask a guest, what are you in the mood for? What's going to hit the spot right now? And a flight could be the great answer to that question. I want to begin with a flight. And for all of your staff out there, the guest is going to spend more, the staff's going to make more money on that tap. So we see another mistake that happens in tap rooms is staff not encouraging another beer. Now, I'm going to drop some data on you for a sec. We see that 45% of the time, nearly 50% of the time, staff aren't encouraging guests to order another beverage. Literally 1 out of 2 times, staff are not encouraging that. I know different tap rooms have different models. Some people have counter service, some people have table service. Even for the busy tap rooms that quite large, maybe have someone walk around every now and then and say, hey, Andrew, when you're ready, just come back up to the counter. We'll take care of you. Just those little touch points go a long way. It's very important to suggest that another drink, because we could get stuck in conversation. We might lose track of the time. We might have to leave. But if you give us that simple reminder, oh, that lager was pretty good, I would like another, I'm going to order it right then and there. And we see guests spend 13% more when staff suggest another beer. A simple way to get your team to encourage it. It looks like you really enjoyed that. Can I interest you in another? Just a simple add-on that you see tab get higher and higher, and the staff members you have working are going to make higher tips because of it. As I mentioned earlier, if you take away one thing from today, and I hate to really focus on this one, but it's the easiest way you can make more money right away. We see, and I love actually your feedback, Dan. How often when you go to a tap room, are staff encouraging you to take beer to go?
Less than half. I would say less than 25%.
You're getting really close there.
Yeah.
So the numbers say staff are encouraging to go beer 19% of the time. 1 out of 5 times, they're going to say, hey, Dan, you really enjoyed that. Did you know we have it to go? And crazy enough, there are some still people who don't know breweries offer beer to go. They might come to the tap room and not even realize you make it here on site. That's why education is so important. Whether it's the new beer drinker or the beer nerd, we all want to learn more. So just encourage people to take beer to go. And as the data shows, 1 out of 5 times staff are encouraging it. And when the staff don't encourage it, the guest is only making the purchase on their own 9% of the time. But when you say, hey, Dan, you really enjoyed that IPA. Do you want to take some home? The guest says yes 49% of the time. 50% of the time, Dan will say yes when you just ask him the question. So, Jonathan, next time Dan comes to your tap room, tell him the data says he's probably going to say yes, so ask him the question. So simple. Hey, Dan, you really enjoyed that. Would you like some to go? So encourage your staff to do that as soon as you get home back to the tap room today. Now, as I mentioned, 2 of the most crucial touch points for a taproom visit are when you first walk in and when you first leave, because no one likes to leave a visit when they've spent a bit of money in a taproom and not feeling valued. It's so important to thank a guest upon leaving. Guests are 25% more likely to recommend a brewery when staff thanks them upon leaving. So, as I close my tab, Allie, just simply say, hey, thanks for visiting today. Hope to see you soon. And some data not on the slide right now that blows my mind. When a guest goes to a tap room for the first time and receives low engagement, we all know what low engagement is. When the bartender's not really engaging, they seem like they don't really care. They're not offering recommendations. When I have that experience at a tap room, the guest is only 45% likely to return. Guess what that means? I'm not coming back. Unless Jonathan's dragging me back for trivia night or karaoke or something like that, I'm probably not going to that tap room again. But when I go to a tap room for the first time, have a highly engaged experience, and I leave saying, wow, Allie was the best server I've ever had. I can't wait to come back. I'm 99% likely to return and share that experience. Connecting with your guests goes a long way. And when guests feel that high level of engagement, they're going to spend 30% more. 30% more when they feel connected to you and your team. And I quoted a minute ago, guests are 99% likely to return after that first visit if they receive that high level. As a whole, even on repeat visits, they're 94% likely to return and recommend. So with so much competition out there in the landscape, I know when I go to a brewery, I've got 2 options within a half mile of my house. I'm going to continually to go to the place that offers me the whole package, the place where I get the great beer, the great atmosphere, and the really engaging staff. So I would like to pause for a second to see if anybody has any questions. Then I'll kind of go over some metrics you can use to motivate your team. So does anybody have any questions, thoughts about what we've discussed thus far? There is not a bad question. I love talking about data, taproom experience, motivating your team.
Yeah, and this is great. Now I'll defer to see if Ellie or John have some questions as well too. But one of the things that, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to just in the last 90 days of some of the places that I've been at and seen some of these errors, seen some of the things, and it just didn't occur to me. Sometimes you just walk out of there as a customer, not realizing, putting your finger on, why did that just not feel that great? It was just so. I was recently at one where I had to search for where their to-go beer was, and it was buried in the corner with their merch, and no one brought it up. I had to go find it. So, I mean, the list goes on. I'm curious, so if you could touch on just really quickly and connect the dots. You talked about the 9,000 data points, which is just awesome. But how do you guys accumulate that? I'm a big fan of data, so just understanding where this is coming from since 2017.
Yeah, really great question there, Dan. So to touch on what you first said, it's so important to make things easy for a guest, because the harder you make it, the less money they'll spend. Yeah, if you have to go searching for something, and Dan, you'll probably go search for something. I might go search for something, but the average guest isn't going to search. They're just going to walk out the door, and if you don't ask them for that second beer, they're going to go next year the store, have their dinner, and another pint next door. So make things easy. But with regard to our data set, Secret Hopper is a mystery shopping company for breweries. We've worked with 500 plus breweries, all across the country. And we have two data sets we dive into. So when people sign up for Secret Hopper, we want to make sure they understand what they're getting into. When we send a shopper to visit a tap room, they're going to have a flight followed by a pint. Then they're going to complete a questionnaire based on their experience. So when people are signing up to get paid to visit breweries, we have them complete a visit report of a recent brewery that they've visited. So these are people we're not paying for their data. We've had over 9,000 people decide to complete this questionnaire to learn a little bit more about our process and share recent experiences. So we have 9,000, a little bit over, unique visits from 2017 to current that we dive into. And they typically cover 25 to 30 data points. We want to make it easy for taproom managers and owners. We want a taproom manager or owner to read a report and say, okay, well, Dan's doing a great job of engaging with guests and his own team, or Andrew needs a little more training on the customer engagement. We want to make it super easy, because taproom managers and owners, you all are busy. You don't have time to read a 30-minute writing sample on someone's 30-minute visit to your tap room. We want to give you the easy tools that you can read something in just a minute or two and know the steps you need. So we've been lucky enough to create this data set of 9,000 tap room visits over the past few years. It's interesting to see that the average tab represents about 1.9 guests. And a new thing that we've been really diving into, and it's probably a topic for another talk we could do together, Dan, is the importance on food in tap rooms, because we're diving into a data set these days that really speaks to the current challenges taproom owners and managers are having right now. And a big thing we're hearing in a lot of conversations we're having is that people want food. As I mentioned a minute ago, sometimes people go to a tap room, they'll have a pint, they'll ask the bartender, hey, do you have any food? The answer will be no. They'll go next door to the pizza shop, they'll have a pint and a whole pizza there. So I think it's so important right now for tap room to consider food. And one thing we've learned recently by going through this new data set, which really hones in on the food component, we see that it gets really impactful when tap rooms have food spends over $10. So something more than, say, a bag of chips or a pretzel, something that's more substantial, something that's probably going to be more like meal-like. So when you look at visits where guests are spending over $10 in food, we see those tabs 88% higher than tabs that don't include food. And guess what? That staff member you have who's serving that party, they're going to get tipped a whole lot higher too, just because those tabs are quite a bit bigger. So, in the quest to please everyone, I think food's something that everybody should be considering these days, whether it's simply adding the pretzels, chips, it's maybe fancy Lunchable behind the bar. There's lots of options you can consider, but food is a way you can see higher tabs. And something our data has shown recently that's fascinated me that I would encourage you all to consider diving a little bit deeper into if you haven't already.
Yeah, that's great, Andrew. I appreciate it. And I like I said, with doing this so topical. I mean, just coming off of the recently for myself, the Ohio conference, Guild conference, the Michigan conference, the discussion around tap rooms and how to everything from better utilize, introduce food, the better service is just becoming a growing topic that I know a lot of breweries are trying to figure out and improve, and some of the talk tracks at CBC, et cetera, you can just tell that it's an area that as the dynamics are changing, as those customers are changing, how do you do that? But I going back to what you've covered, this is great. I like the data focus, because if I'm understanding this, you can implement some of these things very quickly, unlike other initiatives sometimes you hear about, and then look at your historical March and April numbers and start to understand, like, look at our last year, per customer visit costs versus this year's with some of this approach on basics, right? Of saying hello, saying goodbye, helping them with the flight, et cetera. It's great to kind of quantify and look at that improvement. So Makes sense. And thank you. That kind of answered my question a little bit more on where the data was coming from.
Yeah, I mean, these are easy fixes you can take to your tap room. And we're not saying tap rooms are making a lot of mistakes or it's not a great experience. These are ways to make it even more memorable for your staff and guests. And certain things like to-go beer, for example. No one's ever going to leave a tap room and say, geez, they didn't ask me to take beer home. It's not going to impact the guest quality of experience, but it does impact you as brewery owners, tap room managers, as tap room staff. Your tap room is where you're going to make the most money. And the opportunity to ask that question has the ability to get tabbed even higher and benefit everybody that I've just named. Now, Dan, how are we doing in time? I want to be mindful of everybody and happy to go over more, but understanding if we need to wind it down.
I believe here, if you mentioned you wanted to bookend with some additional information here for the last 2 minutes. Is that good to provide that to put a cap on things for everybody here and be mindful?
Absolutely. So I'm going to bring up an image right now of 2024 Taproom staff motivation metrics. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm sure we're happy to send this out to you. It's on our blog as well. But when it comes to motivating staff, you can't just throw 10 things at them at once. You can't say, hey, greet every guest, offer recommendations, always introduce yourself, offer to go beer. You can't do that. It's overwhelming. Hone in on one thing each month. Hey, this month, we're going to focus on to-go beer. I want you all to get better at encouraging to-go beer. And sometimes when it comes to to-go beer sales, you don't just want to say, hey, whoever sells the most to-go beer this month. You might want to say, hey, whoever shows the most improvement from their past to-go beer sales. You want to really mix up the metrics. And another metrics that I really enjoy is tip percentage. Tip percentage correlates very heavily to staff engagement. The higher team members engaging, the higher the tip percentage is going to be. So you could potentially in January or February or March, whatever month you may be listening or watching this, you could say, hey, whoever has the highest tip percentage on our team, we're going to reward you with this. And you really want to ask your team what's going to motivate and recognize them the most. It could be, that Chick-fil-A gift card. They could want to have a gold star on the wall. It could be just getting a shout out at a team newsletter or meeting. Understand what motivates your team, but highest average tip percentage is another really great one. I also like, using our secret hopper data. We have scores on top of each secret hopper report. Motivate your team and reward them for having the highest secret hopper scores, which correlate a lot with quality of guests, but also overall taproom experience of being a good team player. So I imagine we can link to these taproom staff metrics later in the recording, but find out what's going to motivate your team. Here are 12 great ones you can use. But at the end of the day, when you can get your staff engaging at a higher level with your guests are going to spend more money. They're going to come back sooner. Your staff's going to be seeing more customers in your tap room. They're going to be seeing higher tabs. They're going to be seeing higher tips. And as managers and owners, your lives are going to be easier because you're going to have to hire a little bit less. And that's what we do at Secret Hopper. We help you monitor the quality of experience in your tap room. And whether you already know you have a world-class tap room experience, a lot of breweries like you are working with us to find ways to reward their team and just have that peace of mind that when you go home for the night, your team's doing a great job. And we also work with breweries who, just want benchmarks to know where they are and find little ways that can maximize that experience for everyone involved. So Dan, I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity today. I love what you're doing at the Beverage Federation. I love your new hat, by the way. I didn't compliment you off air on that. The colors look awesome. I can't wait to see Pint soon. And share Pint soon. Does anybody have any questions?
No other questions and anything, guys. We'll obviously get everybody's information for Andrew to get out there. He did mention it in the video, so you got that, and you can always reach out to him for other things. Andrew, I want to thank you for the time. Jonathan, I want to thank you for participating. It was great, very topical, and also some great action items to see what you can put out in the field and start to make that impact. So thank you, everybody. And we appreciate it. And as always, Andrew, it was good to talk to you and very informative.
Appreciate you, everybody. See you soon. Cheers.